We would like to request everyone to please all settle down as we are about to commence our program for today. Please take your seats, ladies and gentlemen. And let's bring our attention to the screen for the audio and video presentation.
The Philippines, as a United Nations member state, commits to participate in the United Nations Transforming Education Summit 2022 by conducting national consultations in order to develop a shared vision, commitment, and alignment of actions across constituencies to transform education between now and 2030. On June 5 to 7, 2022, DepEd participated in the second Asia-Pacific Regional Education Ministerial Conference, or APREMC2, in Thailand, particularly the ministerial segment, to prepare the regional statement or the Bangkok Statement. This was followed by the first leg of national consultation on June 14, 2022, which was participated by the members of the Philippine Forum for Inclusive Quality Basic Education, or Education Forum, a platform for partners' engagement with membership from government agencies, academe, civil society organizations, private sector, development partners, and private schools association. The consultation yielded relevant issues and challenges confronting education and critical action points that are responsive to the summit. Priority action points were identified under the 6 thematic action tracks: inclusive, equitable, safe, and healthy schools, learning and skills for life, work and sustainable development, teachers, teaching and the teaching profession, digital learning and transformation, financing of education, and governance in education. On June 28 to 30, 2022, during the pre-summit of the Transforming Education Summit 2022 in Paris, France, former Secretary Leonor Magtorres-Briones delivered the country statement and presented the identified priority areas that are crucial in transforming education, such as scaling up the innovations and learning gains realized during the pandemic, and acknowledging youth participation as crucial in designing education policies and programs. Moreover, 14 regions conducted the regional consultation through the Regional Development Council, which is composed of government agencies, development sectors, private sectors, local government units, DepEd officials, and technical staff. In July, the grassroots consultations of the summit were conducted in the different parts of the Philippines. This second series of consultation focused on the school-level stakeholders, including school heads, teachers, learners, parents and legal guardians, and community members through school visits to conduct key informant interviews and focus group discussions with these grassroots stakeholders. In particular, from the 9 selected regions, 14 school division offices were randomly selected, ensuring representation of division, classification or sizes, as well as urban and rural areas. 36 schools were visited and consulted, which represented the public and private sector, rural and urban areas, and schools having different curricular offerings and special programs, including schools from the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao or Broaden. In total, 730 individuals were consulted, composed of 216 learners from elementary, junior and senior high school, SPED and ALS learners, 135 parents, 177 teachers, 99 school heads, and 103 community members. The Ministry of Basic, Higher, and Technical Education spearheaded a consultation for the Bangsamoro Education Reform and Development, BER, participated by adolescent and youth groups and education stakeholders. The workshop focused on the thematic action tracks, the education situation in Born, issues and gaps, and suggested solutions and These engagements, along with the results of the National Consultation, will inform the country statement for the Transforming Education Summit in the United Nations headquarters, New York, in September 2022, to be participated by heads of states. The voices of our stakeholders, especially of the youth, will amplify our nation's needs and aspirations in achieving safe, equitable, and quality basic education for all Filipinos.
Good morning, education partners. Good morning, everyone. We are glad to have you all here again with us today. Welcome to our Stakeholders Convergence for the United Nations Transforming Education Summit 2022 or the TES 2022, live here at Pasig City. And of course, we are also live on our DepEd official Facebook page, our YouTube channel, and our DepEd website. Magandang umaga po.
Muli, magandang umaga po sa ating lahat. We would like to welcome you back for the TES culmination activities. Samahan niyo po kami dahil live din tayo sa ating Facebook ngayon, sa DepEd YouTube channel at DepEd website. Gamitin po natin ang hashtag na Transforming Education and hashtag TransformPHEduc. Gamitin po natin ating Twitter, Facebook, and other social media platforms. Dahil mamaya po babasahin po natin ang inyong insights, comments para po sa ating event ngayong araw.
But before we forget, let us introduce ourselves. I am Leah.
And I am Teds, at kami po ang magiging moderator nyo for today's event.
Yeah.
To begin, may we invite everyone to please all rise for the singing of the Philippine National Anthem, to be followed by the Invocation.
Mga kababayan, ang pambansang awit ng Pilipinas.
O God, creator of the heaven and the universe, you are worthy of our praises. In you alone we pray and submit ourselves, for we are nothing without you. We humbly ask for your forgiveness and mercy. Dear Lord, we gather here today with the intent of doing good in thy name. Guide us to the right path. May our efforts be blessed with insights, understanding, wisdom, and respect for all. May our deep faith in you give us strength to act honestly and well in all matters before us. Amen.
Alright, you may all now take your seats. Maraming salamat po. Again, mabuhay and welcome to our Stakeholders Convergence for the United Nations Transforming Education Summit 2022. Marami talaga po kaming inihanda para sa inyo ngayong maghapon, no? So if you want to know what we have in store for you today, we would like to request you, or you may scan our QR code, which we will be presenting, so that you may view our program for today, what we have prepared for you. But before we begin, of course, to acknowledge our participants joining us here today. There's a lot of us here today, and we thank you for your presence. But to acknowledge our participants, please join us in welcoming the Department of Education Executive Committee members, starting with Yusek Epimaco V. Dinsing III, our Undersecretary and Chief of Staff. We also have Undersecretary Annalyn M. Sevilla, or Undersecretary for Finance. She's not. And joining her is Attorney Omar Alexander Romero, the Assistant Secretary for Finance. Wala siya. Okay. We also have Attorney Attorney Michael Christian Ablan, the Undersecretary for Administration. Yan. Salamat, sir. Kasama din po natin si Attorney Christopher Lawrence Arnuco, our Assistant Secretary for Procurement and Administration. Are you? Okay. We also have our Undersecretary, Jose Ernesto Gaviola, for Curriculum and Instruction. Magandang umaga, sir. And Assistant Secretary Alma Ruby Torrio, our Assistant Secretary for Curriculum and Instruction. Thank you, ma'am. And Attorney Gerard Chan, Undersecretary for Legislative Affairs and International Cooperation Office.
Yes, Leah. This morning, we also have Attorney Rebsi A. Escobedo, the Undersecretary for Governance and Field Operations.
Wala.
We also have ASEC Francis Cesar B. Bringas, the Assistant Secretary for Field Operations, or mas kilala po natin bilang Sir Panchet. We also have Attorney Jose Arturo Di Castro, the Undersecretary for Legal Affairs. Attorney Amanda Nograles Santiago, the Assistant Secretary for Legal Affairs. We also have Dr. Gloria Humamil Mercado, our Undersecretary for Bureau of Human Resources and Organizational Development. Of course, we also have ASEC G.H. Ambat, the Assistant Secretary for Alternative Learning System, or ALS. And lastly, we have Dr. Dexter Galban, the Assistant Secretary for Youth Affairs and Special Concerns. And good morning po sa ating mga EXICO members who are present here today. Marami pong salamat sa pagdalo sa ating event.
Yes, maraming salamat po. At of course, kasama din natin, present here with us today, our DepEd Central Office Director. So may we ask all our Central Office Directors to please stand so you may be acknowledged. Alam ko, marami tayong kasayan. Maraming salamat po sa inyo, Director Roger, Director Leila, at sa ating iba pang mga Central Office Directors.
Okay, at syempre kasama din natin ngayong araw ang ating mga minamahal na regional directors na mula pa sa iba't ibang panig ng bansa. Ayan, kaway-kaway po yung mga artists natin who are present here today.
Yan, thank you po for coming all the way to Pasig to
Good
join
morning,
us.
artists.
Maraming salamat po. Nandito rin to them ang ating event for today is called the Stakeholders Convergence. So syempre, kasama din natin ang mga nakausap natin sa ating grassroots consultation. Our schools, division offices, and communities, which are or who are the school division superintendents. Kaway po tayo. Yan.
Mga SDS po natin nakasama.
Ating SDS.
Magandang umaga po.
Gandang umaga po. Our school heads who are also present here with us and our teachers. Ayan.
Good morning po sa ating mga school
Good morning po
heads.
sa inyo. At of course, our learners and teachers. Ayan, kaway tayo to our learners and teachers.
Siyempre, mga mag-aaral at mga guro.
Yan. And of course, our parents and legal guardians who supported us all the way, nakasama ng ating mga learners. Kaway naman po tayo to our parents and guardians. Ayan, nandito po sila. Maraming salamat po sa inyo, sa inyong pagpunta. At syempre, as part of the convergence, we also put highlight, of course, to the youth. So makakasama din natin today ay our youth representatives. Maaari ba naming maimbitahan ang ating youth to please stand up so you may be acknowledged? Kindly stand up sa ating mga youth, ang ating learners. Please stand up. Ayan, sila po ang ating learners na nakuusap mula sa Luzon, Visayas at Mindanao. Ayan, palakpakan po natin sila. Later, no, we will get to hear more about their concerns, their insights as the youth, as today's Filipino youth. Ayan, abangan po natin yan.
At syempre, hindi po natin kakalimutan yung mga kasamahan natin mula sa BARM or Ministry of Basic, Higher and Technical Education. May mga kasamahan po ba tayo mula sa BARM? Pwede po bang tumayo para ma-acknowledge po tayo?
Thank you po.
And
Maraming
good
salamat
morning po at marami pong salamat sa inyo. We are also pleased to welcome our EDUC Forum members from the government sector, development partners, civil society organizations, and private sectors. Para po sa kalaman ng lahat, ang EDUC Forum po ay isang multi-stakeholder platform for consultation and collaborative efforts po, no, na naglalayon na suportahan yung mga strategic basic education policy, planning and programming at the national level. Ito po ay nakonvene noong 2019. Pero ito po ay na-institutionalize noong February 2021 through issuance of DepEd order. Ang ating EDUC Forum po ay nagsisilbi bilang isang engagement with the global initiatives para po ma-ensure yung inclusive, equitable, quality education at para ma-promote ang ating lifelong learning opportunities para sa lahat. Ayan, talagang marami na po tayong pinagdaanan bago makarating sa ating convergence. And today's event would not be possible without the help of our TES Secretariat mula sa DepEd. Nandiyan po sila.
Sa ating paligid. Maraming salamat po sa inyong tulong.
At syempre po, kasama rin natin yung ating mga kasamahan mula sa United Nations Philippines.
Yeah. Yeah. To them, no, napakarami talaga nating partners na sumuporta, mga nakibahagi sa atin para sa convergence na ito. Pero syempre, special shout out din tayo sa ating mga viewers sa ating Facebook Live, sa YouTube channel at sa ating DepEd website. Maraming salamat po sa inyong pagdalo virtually sa ating convergence. At gamitin niyo po ang ating hashtag na Transforming Education at Transform PH Educ para ma-recognize namin kayo. Babasahin namin ang inyong mga insights and comments mamaya po.
Ayan, Lia, bago natin makalimutan, makasama rin tayo from other government agencies. Kasama po natin ngayong umaga si Asek Elaine Falarcuna from the SWD.
DSWD.
Magandang umaga po, ma'am.
Ayan.
And good morning po. We also have, syempre of course, Mr. Gustavo Gonzalez, the UN Resident Coordinator and Humanitarian Coordinator ng UN.
Thank you, Mr. Gonzalez. We also have Mr. Bezad Nubari, the Deputy Representative of Programs from UNICEF Philippines. Thank you, sir.
And of course, we also have Dr. Thomas Silblanc, from the Office of Education Director, USAID Philippines. Good morning po.
Thank you, Mr. Leblanc. Yan. Maraming salamat po. So we all welcome you for coming here today, coming all the way to Pasig City to join us. No? Today, we will see the fruit of the joint efforts of UN, DepEd, and all our other stakeholders, all our other partners to transform education for Filipino learners.
And to formally begin the program, may we have the Vice President of the Republic of the Philippines and the DepEd Secretary, Honorable Sara Z. Duterte, to give her welcome remarks and opening statement.
Assalamualaikum. Madayaw maayong adlaw kaninyong tanan. Magandang araw po sa inyong lahat. To the men and women who organized this Transforming Education Summit Stakeholders Convergence, maraming salamat po sa inyo. Let me recognize the combined efforts and hard work of our DepEd regional directors, the members of the Education Forum, as well as the Ministry of Basic and Higher and Technical Education of the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao. Your input, based on your understanding, experience, and expertise in Philippine education, is truly valuable. The input of these consultations, which will be presented to the United Nations Transforming Education Summit in September 2022 in New York, is truly reflective of the current education landscape of the Philippines. Something that will also serve as our own guide in coming up with interventions in line with the country's commitment to attaining the Sustainable Development Goal of 2030. I may not be able to attend this activity today, but I am confident that with your Undersecretary's leadership and the help of the country's staunchest basic education partners and advocates, we will be able to capture the issues and recommended actions needed for the national statement of commitment we are submitting to the United Nations. The core of our mission is to ensure that we can provide accessible, equitable, and quality basic education to Filipino children, that we can help them build a better future for themselves, that they can achieve their dreams, that they can become productive members of their communities and active partners of the government in building a stronger nation. Patuloy nating mahalin ang Pilipinas. Maraming salamat, daghang salamat.
Thank you to our Vice President of the Republic of the Philippines and Education Secretary, Honorable Sara Z. Duterte. Tama po no ang sinabi ng ating Vice President and Secretary that what brought us together here today is really inclusivity and our core mission to provide quality education, accessible and equitable education for all our Filipino learners. And this is to provide them a better future for themselves. In turn, to deliver the message of the United Nations Philippines, may we call on the UN Coordinator and Humanitarian Coordinator, Mr. Gustavo Gonzalez.
Magandang umaga sa inyo lahat. Good morning, all of you. And I would like to emphasize that I'm feeling this energy since the moment that I arrived to this hotel. So I think this is an excellent, very good indicator that we will succeed in this meeting. Undersecretary Pimaco Densing, Undersecretary Jose Ernesto Gaviola, Undersecretary Attorney Michael Cristian Ablan, and other representatives from the governments. We have also representatives from BARM. First of all, I would like to congratulate the organizers for this very timely meeting in preparation of the Transforming Education Summit. I'm not going to enter into the details, but you cannot imagine the complex logistics in getting to this meeting. Because in some way, we are catching up on a process, and I would like to congratulate the Department of Education for all of this investment to making sure that your voices, the voices of the teachers, learners, parents, the voices of the private sector, civil society organization, international organization, all of these voices, they will contribute to a strong and robust and inspiring position of the Philippines at the upcoming Transforming Education Summit. You know that this will take place in New York in September at the margins of the UN General Assembly. I had the honor to meet President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. just 1 month ago. We discussed his participation at the UN General Assembly, And I convey the message that this is a historic opportunity for you as a president, but it's also a historic opportunity for the Philippines to be exposed to all the head of states in the UN General Assembly and convey a strong message in transforming education. So we hope that with your contribution, because in fact you are expected to bring voices and inputs for the presentation of the Philippines statement at the Transforming Education Summit. As UN representative, of course, I'm very proud of being part of this exercise, to be here, to have the honor to address my message, and I would like to congratulate my colleagues from UNICEF and UNESCO for their active involvement in the preparation of this summit. We have as a key milestone the summit, but if we just put all of this effort to the summit, I think that we will risk to miss our vision on that. So I think that we prepare for the September summit, but it's important that coming back from the summit, we transform our voices, proposals, into a very concrete agenda, an agenda for action. And this is what I would like to share with you on the importance of this gathering today. Beyond the summit, we hope that the result of this consultation with stakeholders, including children, the youth, and their parents, will contribute to the preparation of an ambitious roadmap to rethink education. In the words of the Secretary General, he says to reinvent education. In fact, we need to reinvent education not just because we have a pandemic. No, sometimes we see, well, this discussion is because we are still facing the negative impact of the pandemic. Of course that the pandemic is affecting our systems, is affecting our expectations. We recognize that we are living with high level of uncertainties, but we need to reinvent education because we learned from the pandemic that the prevailing system, and this is not just in the Philippines, all of us at the world level, we learned from the pandemic that the prevailing system of education has to better adapt to a reality that is fluid, that is changing, that is transforming. When we look at the impact of the digital technology, something that we learned from the pandemic, so we realized that when we say we need to reinvent the system, education system, is that we need to, in some way, to adapt to this very fluid and changing reality. And perhaps the first question we must ask ourselves is whether or not the prevailing model contributes to address inequalities and make societies more inclusive. And I would like to say something that all of you leaders of education, you already know, but allow me to emphasize that. It is thanks to the education system that societies handles the present and prepare for the future. And experience shows that countries that invest the most in education are the best ones to build their future. So in some way, the future of any nation, the future of this nation, the future of my own country, relies on the quality of its education. So today's gathering is a great opportunity, dear partners, colleagues, and friends, great opportunity to share views, positions, ambitions, and contribute to a process that, of course, cannot stop in the upcoming summit in New York. It should continue and be transformed into a reliable action agenda. And you remember, the President of the Republic during the State of the Nation address confirmed that his team, many of you, is preparing the new Philippines development plan for the upcoming 6 years. And you know, for us as a member of the United Nations, every time we have a new development plan is homework for us. So as a United Nations, and I would like to also associate other international organizations, the Asian Development Bank, the World Bank, all of us, we have a lot of expectations on this new Philippines development plan. So you have the responsibility to place education at the center of this plan. So don't miss this opportunity. And of course, as a UN, we will be there to support you. I would like to share with you the principles of this summit in New York. And I think that all of these principles are very much respected in this meeting. One of the principles for the organization of the summit is that it should be country-led. You know, we have universal principles of education, but education is a country-specific agenda. So if we prepare for the summit, you have a strong voice because it should be a country-led process. And I'm glad to know that the national government has taken a strong leadership in this consultation. And we are coming, I'm happy to see my colleagues from BARM, because we are coming from the consultations in BARM. I had the opportunity to meet also Chief Minister Murad, and we were talking about your consultation. And now you are here. So this is important. It's a whole of the nation consultation that makes our proposal even stronger. So, and you know, the Vice President and Secretary of Education was just appointed as the national convener for the preparation of this summit. This is fabulous because it means that we have a strong engagement from her as a Vice President, as a Secretary of Education, and now as the main player gathering all of these voices for a strong position of the Philippines in New York. Number two, the summit and the preparation for the summit should be inclusive. And we recognize that this is critical for the voices of youth, parents, teachers, and all stakeholders groups that are reflected in this fantastic meeting. Number three, and this is extremely important, it should be youth-inspired. The UN Secretary General has made a special emphasis on the importance of the role of the youth in shaping the summit. Many of them, they are there. They are even taking technical responsibilities in the organization of this meeting. But the participation of the youth should be highlighted. No? The summit itself is prepared with and for the youth. And number four, it should build on existing efforts. And I'm happy to see the members of the Department of Education that they are bringing their ideas, their existing plans, and we will make the most of existing investment and very good ideas and lessons learned. Let me now share with you what we are learning from the region. I cannot say that all of these principles can be applied to the Philippines, but as a UN representative, I would like to share with you what we are getting from other countries in the region. So we are learning the following, that for us, they are priority action. No? So our advocacy campaign is around these principles, guiding principles. Number one, reopen all preschools, schools, and learning centers as soon as possible with 5 days a week of in-person classes. This is fundamental. I don't think that it requires further discussion, and the Philippines is in this process. Number two, conduct rapid literacy and numeracy assessment nationwide and launch an emergency learning recovery plan targeting foundational and socio-emotional skills. And I just had a discussion with Undersecretary where he was saying, you know, we have principles, we have theoretical, but now is the time of action. We need action. And I think that this is a political way of framing these second principles that for which we advocate as the United Nations. Number 3, elevate the value of the teaching profession with corresponding investments in increasing compensation, training, benefits, protections, career advancement, and reduction of non-teaching activities. Number 4, launch a digital learning national program to provide connectivity to all schools by 2030, devices with learning applications to all students in last mile schools and rural areas, and digital teaching training. And this is something that was highlighted by the President of the Republic. Number 5, increase budget allocation in the education system to implement the Basic Education Development Plan 2030, including reaching 6% of GDP by 2030, or at least 20% of the national budget, and increase special education funds share to at least 2% for municipalities. And I'm happy that we have representative here from finance, from the budget. I think that this is the right way of making sure that principles and ideas that are also supported by financing. So dear colleagues, partners, and friends, the United Nations stands ready to be part of the solutions because you are part of the United Nations, so we are not a bilateral country. So the government of the Philippines and the UN, we must work together, and we would like to be part of this process and part of the solutions. And of course, we remain committed to support the government of the Philippines in such endeavors. So I wish you a very productive debate, very productive discussions, and thank you so much for your time. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gustavo Gonzalez. Mr. Gonzalez put emphasis on our different roles as education stakeholders, that it will all contribute in transforming our education, and that being inclusive is critical in shaping our education futures. And as everyone has witnessed in this room, the past weeks have been very productive and insightful for us, na kung saan nakinig tayo sa iba't ibang kwento ng ating mga grassroots stakeholders mula sa learners, mga teachers, ang ating mga community members, barangay officials, kasama ang ating mga guro, and of course, everyone in the community, kinausap po natin ng tao sa tao, puso sa puso, para malaman ano ba yung kanilang mga hinaing, mga concern, at ano ba yung mga kanilang nais iparating, no, na mensahe sa gobyerno. And now, to give us the consultation highlights of the Transforming Education Summit 2022, may we call on the Chief of the Policy Research and Development Division. May we call on Ms. Mariel C. Bayangos.
Maraming salamat, Tedem at Leah. Magandang umaga po sa ating lahat, and we are all happy to welcome you back in this important event to present back to our stakeholders, our partners, the result of our consultation. It's been a privilege for our team the past 2 months listening to these important conversations, deepening the understanding of education issues, pagpapalalim at pagpapatibay nung pag-unawa po natin dun sa mga issue na kinakaharap. Hindi lamang sa nakaraang 2 taon na ang mga mag-aaral po natin ay nag-aaral sa kanilang mga tahanan, but also yung karanasan ng mga magulang, nais po namin silang maibahagi po sa inyo at sana mabigyan namin ng hustisya sa susunod na 30 minutes ng amin pong presentation and also 15 minutes later on from our representative from the MBHTE. So, hindi ko na po papatagalin, simulan po natin. Ayan, so bago po ang lahat, hinihikayat po natin yung mga kasamahan po natin joining virtually. If you can also share your thoughts in our presentation and use these hashtags, Transforming Education and Transform PH Educ, para po makapture po natin yung mga additional inputs and insights po ninyo dito po sa ating magiging pag-uusap ngayong araw po na ito. Alright, so as mentioned earlier by Gustavo, ito po yung mga prinsipyo na sinunod po natin dito po sa ating participation and preparation for TES. So we know that DepEd is the national convener in our preparation for TES, and DepEd has been leading this conversation and this process since May 2022. So marami na rin po yung mga efforts na nagawa po natin para masiguro na ang boses ng mga partners at ng stakeholders ay marinig dito po sa platform po na ito at dito po sa preparation po natin for TES. Inclusive, so kung makikita po ninyo, we tried to bring in not only our learners but also parents in this process at hindi po sila nanggaling sa mga syudad. In fact, we have a representative as far as Tawi-Tawi, Quirino, so we really tried to be as representative as we can, capturing their different contexts and situations so we can fully understand kung ano po yung kanilang pananaw dito po sa ating pong mga kinakaharap na challenges and also get their inputs on how they can participate in transforming education, especially in our country. Youth-inspired, and also lastly, we're building on existing efforts. We know that last June we launched the BEDP 2030. So ito po yung take-off point po natin, and substantiating the BEDP is the result of our consultation for the TES. Alright, so work streams. So ito po, pinagsabay-sabay na po natin itong isagawa. So we conducted the National Consultation last June, and then hinagip na po natin yung the thematic action tracks, and we are happy to report to the body that we are adding 1 thematic track. So ang nasa yung na-propose po from the UN ay 5 thematic tracks, so we're adding 1 more, governance in education, because we thought this is a critical area that we need to look into as well, moving forward to getting back to our SDG 2030 goals. Alright, and then public engagement, kaya po meron tayong pa-hashtag dahil alam po natin na I'm sure marami pa tayong mga hindi na-capture na views, and we wanted to ensure that we provide that space for everyone to participate in this very important conversation. Alright, so ito po yung mga pinagdaanan natin na consultations. We had the first leg last June, at syempre po nais po nating pasalamatan ng ating mga regional directors for leading our regional and SDO level conversation. Bali sila po yung nag-reach out sa ating mga regional partners and also yung mga LSB partners po natin para masiguro po natin na marinig din po natin yung hanay ng ating mga LGU officials dito po sa usapin na ito. We had our grassroots consultation, and 2 days ago, ang BARM po, MBHTE, ay meron din po silang naging pakikipag-usap sa kanilang iba-ibang sektor sa BARM po. Alright, so yan, ito po yung summary. We can provide you the copy of this one, but just to note na 730 learners, teachers, school heads, parents, and community members participated in the grassroots. Kasama na po dito yung mga mag-aaral po natin from BARM. Alright, so ito na po yung sa highlight. So I'll go through the 6 thematic tracks. So for inclusive, equitable, safe, and healthy schools. So dito po makikita po natin na when we talk about schools, we're not only talking about the hard component of setting up schools, but also looking at the soft component, meaning there has to be a closer look at the mental health aspects and also the welfare and well-being of our learners and teachers. So dito po, syempre, yung na-raise yung mga inadequacy in terms of our facilities. And when we talk about facilities, our learners are not only talking about the need for classrooms, but also other facilities like libraries, laboratory, clinic. Nakita po nila yung kahalagahan ng clinic dahil po tayo ay tayo ay nagdaraan sa pandemya at maraming mga health risks. So nakita po nila na mahalaga na meron itong serbisyo na ito. Playing areas, lalo na po yung mga elementary students, nakita nila na kailangan merong sufficient ground for them to play and not only stay in their classrooms. And then limitation of schools based on their geographical and political conditions. We know that there are certain areas na limited po yung services na napro-provide natin dahil sila ay malayo at may mga political issues tayo na kailangan ding isettle para fully we can provide these services to our learners. Next, we also have inaccessible and limited school programs and activities to accommodate different types of learners. While marami na pong nagawa not only the government but also our education partners in ensuring that we are being responsive in terms of our programs. Nakita po natin sa ating pakikipag-usap sa mga guro at mag-aaral na meron pa ring mga programa at meron pa rin tayong mga types of learners that has to be provided with more specific programs. Isang halimbawa po dito, may nag-participate po sa atin na from the Philippine School for the Deaf. So nakikita po nila yung kahalagahan ng pagtuturo ng Filipino Sign Language. Hindi lamang po sa kanila bilang mga mag-aaral, hindi lang sa kanilang guro, but also involving yung mga ibang schools po natin para po mas magkaroon ng interaction with our learners with special needs. Also, when we went to Tawi-Tawi, also yung more specific programs responding to learning needs of our Badjao and Tausug learners, yun din po yung isang area na na-raise po nila during our conversations with them. Alright, and then yung socio-economic challenges of learners from marginalized and vulnerable groups affecting education continuity. We know that may advantage po yung in-person class. Nakita po natin yon dun sa findings ng assessment of the pilot face-to-face class implementation last November to December 2021. But of course, there would be new challenges as they go back to their schools for face-to-face classes. There would be household cost na anticipated po ng mga magulang, ng community, and even ng learners. And ito po yung isa po ito sa mga na-raise din na concern during the consultation. Okay. All right. Issues in ensuring healthy and psychologically safe learning environment, and we'd like to put emphasis po dun sa being psychologically safe na learning environment because during our consultations may mga lumalabas po na ganon na specifically po we want to highlight yung pag-stigmatize po dun sa ating mga ALS learners dahil sila ay overage. There were reports on bullying as well from the learners who participated in the discussion. Next. Alright, so ito po yung mga proposed priority areas coming from our stakeholders. So yung adequacy, appropriate, and conducive learning facilities, safely reopen all schools, community learning centers, ECCD, institutionalization of blended learning strategies, lalo na po yung mga magagandang learning strategies na nabuo during the height of the COVID-19 pandemic, expanding the alternative learning system and other inclusion programs. And then lastly po, yung overall well-being of learners, looking at that not only on their physical health but also on their mental well-being. Alright, and then yung transformation of school environment into inclusive, equitable, safe, and healthy spaces. And also looking at the learning environment not as a classroom setup but being more imaginative as well, kung paano mas matututo yung mga bata, ano yung mga learning environment na kung saan magkakaroon ng mas makabuluhang pagkatuto ang atin pong mga mag-aaral. Continue improving the capacity of teachers by equipping them with necessary skills. Yung bukod po ito dun sa pagiging mahusay sa kanilang mga subject areas, syempre po yung other support mechanism na kailangan i-provide ng teachers. Our teachers are expected to provide psychosocial support to our learners, and kailangan ma-equip din po yung mga guro po natin in terms of that. Develop and implement policies, legislations, plans and budgets that protect rights, promote equity or inclusion. And yung crisis-sensitive lens ng education aspect ay kailangan din pong ma-highlight because we know na may mga areas pa rin po na later po maririnig po ninyo yung mga videos po na kinalap po namin, no? Marinig po natin straight from our stakeholders na may mga paaralan po talaga na nahihirapan din po talaga silang mag-deliver ng education services because they are in complex emergency situations. Alright, broaden health education programs and one way of doing that is to improve access to variety of healthy and nutritious food. Higher and technical education institutions accessible to all types of learners. We know that there are certain areas talaga na maliit pa lang din po yung opportunity nila makapag-proceed to tertiary, not only because of their economic condition but also there's another issue on access. Walang available na and very costly for them to proceed to tertiary because they have to go to other places, and yun po malaki yung household cost na equivalent to that. And then establishment of education institutions in sensitive political situations and complex education emergencies, especially po those faced by Filipino learners in Sabah. Alright, so ayan, yun yung ating for the first thematic track. So now, again, we'd like to reiterate our, sa mga nakikinig virtually, if you can join us in this conversation, and and use these hashtags para po matrack po namin yung mga sharings po ninyo, and we can mention them later into the plenary. Now we move to our second thematic track. So ngayon, nakita po natin yung mga issues at the school level, and now we go to our learners. Ano naman yung mga tingin ng learners natin na kailangan nila para mas maging competitive sila, and ano yung mga proposed actions. So first, yung distance learning modality presented challenges. So sa maraming conversations, narinig po natin ito, na maraming mga kinaharap, na hindi lang ang mga mag-aaral, even yung mga parents po nila. Actually po, kahit yung mga barangay officials, nakita rin po nila how the challenges faced by our learners and their parents in facilitating the distance learning modality. Also, yung learners, parents, and educators reported experiencing challenges in implementing the new features of K-12 curriculum. And curriculum requires covering too many competencies. So yun po yung isa sa mga naging feedback. Lack of life skills, basic literacy skills, critical thinking skills, and employment-ready skills. And then, for the ALS program, learners and teachers experience challenges in curriculum implementation such as outdated modules, lack of hand-on practical learning activities, excessively numerous and difficult competencies. But the context of this one ay dahil nga po limited yung naging interaction with learners over the last 2 years. So, ito po yung mga naging effect po nun sa atin pong mga mag-aaral. And then we also have, despite limited offerings of STEM, only small percentage of graduates from STEM track yung nakaka-progress because of the grade requirements. And then po yung lack of appropriate and adequate learning materials and equipment in remote and specialized schools. Ito po yung mga proposed na priority areas: strengthen early childhood intervention as a foundation of learning, also the seamless transition of learners from kindergarten, elementary, junior high school, and senior high school, even po yung transition ng mga ALS learners who would be proceeding to tertiary. Isa rin po yun sa area na na-raise during our conversation with ALS coordinators and learners. Generate evidence to support learning continuity and recovery, and then lastly, fully engage our youth in the learning process and the governance of their schools and community learning centers. One of the things that we want to highlight in this convergence is to show how our youth could really participate, do their role in ensuring that we transform our education in the country. All right, so we also, another proposal is to strengthen and expand multiple and flexible learning and skilling pathways, accelerate the operationalization of the PQF, and also the implementation of the Philippine Skills Framework Initiative. Improve labor market information. So, yung mga natatapos po sa senior high school, while yes, ready sila, equipped sila dun sa mga skills nila to work, pero hindi din nila alam kung saan kailangang ma-channel din po sila. Those kinds of information should be readily available to our senior high school graduates. Alright, so yan po ang sa end ng ating thematic 2. So again, we'd like to encourage our virtual participants to please join us in this conversation. Moving on to our third track, which is on teachers, teaching, and the teaching profession. So how do we now respond to the call of our learners by improving the quality and making our teachers, the numbers to be more sufficient? Alright, so yun po, siyempre, yun, merong teachers shortage, both in public and private education. So, dalawang bahagi po yun na tinignan po natin, and then, in some areas po, yung teacher hiring, naapektuhan siya because, of course, may yung adverse effect ng armed conflict. So, hindi sila makaproceed dun sa kanilang teacher hiring because the operations is affected. And then the SPED program, especially sa public schools, so meron pong migration sa mga SPED teachers po natin. Also, interim measure, yung volunteer teachers, despite receiving lower salaries and benefits compared to regular teachers, are given full teaching load. So, meron pa rin po tayong mga nakilala na mga volunteer teachers at matagal na silang volunteer teachers. Pero yun nga, hindi nila nare-receive yung kanilang full compensation and given similar amount of load with our regular teachers. Private schools report difficulty in retaining faculty. So ito naman po, alam po natin matagal na ito na issue na yung mga private school teachers po natin, lumilipat sila sa public. And isang reason po niyan, syempre yung compensation and benefits din na pwede nilang ma-receive sa public school. Alright. And then yung teaching personnel qualifications and emerging professional development needs. So I think na-mention ko na po ito briefly dun sa previous na presentation. Limited access and opportunities for upskilling of teachers. While we thought nung nauso yung mga virtual seminar, nagkaroon ng maraming opportunities, pero marami pa rin po, lalo na po dun sa mga guro in remote areas na mahina yung kanilang internet connectivity. May mga teachers na hindi pa talaga sila nakakapag-training over the last 2 years, and also the quality of training that they receive are important areas to look into. Status and working condition is another area that we talked about during the consultation. Excessive workload for teachers due to ancillary tasks. So it affects their contact time. So yung ginugugol nilang oras sa pagtuturo na pupunta po dun sa mga ibang tasks na kailangan i-deliver ng mga teacher po natin. And of course, this affects the morale of our teachers kasi nga torn sila between teaching and also submitting those reports. Absence of faculty rooms. So wala, of course, we know that yung pag-build natin ng classrooms are really devoted into teaching and learning, but yun po, yung mga teachers natin, tingin nila, kailangan magkaroon din sila ng kanilang faculty room to aid in their lesson preparations. Alright. Ito po yung mga proposed na priority areas: additional teacher items, establish daycare center workers as fully fledged professionals, and primary learning facilitators in early childhood education. Maximize contact time between teachers and learners, comprehensive and holistic capacity development plan for teachers, and then lastly po, integration of teacher education and professional development. So meaning, yung seamless na transition din nila from pre-service to in-service. Next, you revisit and strengthen the Magna Carta for public school teachers. So more than 50 years na po yung ating Magna Carta, and marami nang naging development sa education sector. So perhaps this would be a good time to look at this, look at the law as well. Institute inclusive and responsive merit-based incentive, welfare and recognition system for teachers. And then providing labor market information, updating of curricula and upskilling of the teachers, improving the teachers, trainers training in technological and vocational skills, and then lastly, sufficient, relevant, and appropriate teaching and learning resources and materials. All right. So yeah, that's for track 3. Now, sorry. Now let's move to the 4th track, which is on digital learning and transformation. So we devoted an entire track for digital learning and transformation para mas ma-highlight po natin not only the integration to the teaching and learning, but also the protection aspects for our learners and teachers. So, public and private schools often experience unstable internet connection. Isa po ito sa mga major na issue na lumabas across all consultation sessions. Teachers and learners at home encounter intermittent power supply. And in fact, may mga areas talaga na wala pong kuryente, no? So, mas challenging po sa kanila itong aspeto po na ito. Most schools reported an insufficient provision of gadgets and devices necessary for digital learning. May mga nakausap kami na mga bata, sinasabi talaga nila na they cannot participate because they don't have cell phones. Some learners had to work so they can secure gadgets para maka-access po sila sa internet. And then disparities in computer literacy and ICT-related skills. Lastly, ALS teachers have no available modules on digital literacy. All right. Yeah. Mismatches between provision of electronic and or digital gadgets and essential services. So yun po, pag merong dinalang gadget, may na-receive na gadget pero walang kuryente. Yung mga ganong klaseng situation. And I think this has to do with the way we maximize the available information. Then lack of access to digital education programs for most marginalized communities. Insufficient variety of communication channels and digital learning methods. So may mga popular platforms, and perhaps you can explore later on, explore other platforms to engage our learners digitally. Tapos yun po, no, yung support to educational content in local and ethnic languages, in sign languages or braille, in closed captions and with audio and graphics. Yon. And then last point po is the absence of confidence in the usefulness of ICT in education. So meron pa rin na may mga nakausap pa rin po kami na meron silang mga anxieties kapag sila yung haharap sila sa laptop, yung mga ganon, kailangan nilang ma-expose to certain, yung mga, the techie world, ano, may mga anxieties pa rin po sila na nararanasan. Alright, proposed priority area, sufficient supply and access to electricity, ICT materials, devices, and connectivity means. Also, provide hardware, software, and tools for digital learning, both for formal and non-formal education. May mga nakasalamuha kaming mga guro, and I'm sure a lot of you knows about this already, na talagang ginagawa ng paraan ng mga teacher na maka-access sila ng mga software and tools that they can use to support digital education. Bridge the gap between digital literacy and teachers through the conduct of LAC sessions and other ICT skills. Nakakapag-LAC sessions naman din po sila, but of course, may mga limitations sa resources, limitations sa expertise. I think yung access to experts, importante po na mabuksan natin sa mga guro para mas maging mahusay sila in facilitating digital education. And then integrate digital citizenship, skills in curricular program. Lastly, develop equitable digital education programs explicitly designed for the most marginalized communities. Initiate intergeneration and interagency dialogue for digital learning. Another would be engage potential partners to help explore other digital platforms to ensure access for all. Yung na-mention ko po earlier, ensure adequate funding related to digital learning, providing support services to manage digital and technological needs of the schools and learning centers, and then lastly, strong referral mechanism in addressing adverse effects from exposure to inappropriate and disturbing content. Ito po yung mas protection aspect to exposure to the digital contents. Ayan, so yun po for the fourth track. So now the fifth track will be on financing naman. So yan, napag-usapan po natin yung mga needs. So now let's go to how do we support this financially? How do we move this forward? So yung mga issues ay merong underinvestment in the education sector. Although marami na po tayong na-achieve dito in terms of improving our funding, pero sa views po ng mga stakeholders po natin, hindi, lalo na po may mga emerging needs as we reopen our schools for in-person learning. So MOE is not enough for school operations, and yun, yung mga financial instability among private schools. Most private schools rely on enrollment fee. Teachers tend to fund, and ito po, maraming beses po namin itong narinig, teachers tend to fund their own learning and instructional materials. Immobilize and inequitable allocation and utilization of financial investment. Alright. Tapos po yung isang na-highlight din po is clearly linking our spending to the learning outcomes. Alright. Inadequate and unsustainable financing for education of marginalized groups. So yung allocation for ALS, SPED, and special programs. And we also want to highlight din po dito yung stringent rules on the utilization of the Special Education Fund. Ito po yung nakalodge po sa atin pong LGU. And yung ALS learners are not qualified for SHS voucher because they do not have grade remark per subject compared to learners in formal education. And yung MOOE for ALS CLC operations and activities. Yan, proposed priority areas, we're happy to hear that this was mentioned earlier by Gustavo. So, increase percent share of education budget in GDP, yung 4 to 6% and 16 to 20% as part of the national budget, increasing the SEF share, and even the distribution of SEF, syempre yung more equitable distribution, provide equitable fund allocation for special programs and inclusion programs, even for early childhood education, equitable funding support for both public and private education sector, expansion of ESC to elementary level, and expansion of TSS to senior high school teachers, inclusion of funding support for private schools in the DepEd budget GAA. Other areas, develop mechanism for direct household support, invest on improving the efficiency and effectiveness of teaching and learning process by hiring complementary non-teaching personnel. This is to support yung mga ancillary tasks po na binibigay sa mga teachers po natin, and invest in transforming school to be safe, resilient, appropriate, and conducive to learning. Lastly, secure funding to achieve the BEDP targets. Ayan, so that's for our track 5. So again, we'd like to remind our virtual participants, engage us, raise issues, ask questions, and share your roles in transforming education. Last track po natin is on education in governance and management. So ito po yung proposed track ng Philippines. Ayan. So ano yung mga issues? Yung excess workload na mention na po natin ito. Kasi po yung mga, syempre yung mga government partners po natin, they also have activities that they channel to our schools. So isa po yan sa mga nakakadagdag din dun sa workload po ng mga guro po natin. DepEd policies and programs unresponsive to specific regional context. Also complicated DepEd processes due to bureaucratic management style, conflicts with policy and program dissemination, and then lastly, addressing public-private partnership issues. Alright, ano yung mga proposed actions? Establish and or strengthen partnership with education stakeholders to ensure or to address the health well-being of learners towards the realization of inclusive, equitable, safe, and healthy schools, closer integration of industry sector participation in development and implementation of senior high school for curriculum exits. We would like to strengthen, it was also proposed to strengthen yung parental involvement in education, or leveraging from our 2-year experience during the height of COVID-19 pandemic. Nakita natin na yung mga magulang, hindi lamang natin sila mahihikayat na tumulong dun sa preparation ng school opening, but also how do we maximize their participation in ensuring that the learning progress of our learners, especially like monitoring and providing feedback to our teachers. Generate evidence to support policy planning and programming towards learning continuity and recovery. Lastly, continued consensus-based technical and financial support for the full transition to autonomy for the Bangsamoro. Alright, then establish a comprehensive M&E and data management system. Na bring up, of course, yung mga redundancy in terms of data collection. So we hope yung mga proposal also is to streamline yung ating data management system and then data collection. Strengthen the local school board dahil po sila syempre ay influencer po natin dun sa paggamit ng Special Education Fund. Strengthen the multisectoral alliances and partnership at the national and local level. And we are happy to note the active participation, of course, of our education forum members as one platform to that. And maraming pa pong platform na pwede po nating i-bring into this, in transforming the education. Leverage on existing multidisciplinary and multisectoral platforms to strategically engage education partners And then lastly po, expand support or capacity building for the other private schools or other schools to be able to achieve. Just to add to this, ano po, na-mention ng mga private school schools po natin, like yung mga teachers, wala silang masyadong access to capacity building, or it's costly for them to participate in trainings and seminars to improve their teaching skills. So yun po yung one area that they highlighted during the discussion. Ayan, so yun po yung 6 na tracks. Sana ay nabigyan ko ng hustisya yung input po ng mga stakeholders po natin. Again, we would like to invite our virtual participants to continue to participate in this conversation. Maraming salamat po sa mga inputs po ninyo, and we hope that we continue to learn together and collectively work together in addressing these issues and challenges. Magandang araw po. Maraming salamat.
Maraming salamat po, Ms. Mariel, for presenting our highlights. Ako, personally po, I'm very proud to say that I was actually kami din ni TEDEM ay part of the consultations. Kami po ay nakarating sa Tarlac at sa Tawi-Tawi talaga para makausap yung ating stakeholders, yung ating learners, parents, teachers, no? Nakita talaga namin yung mga binanggit ni Ms. Mariel na challenges, the issues that she mentioned earlier are things that these stakeholders really experience. Ayan.
Yan, tama ka dyan, Lia. Kami po, narating po namin yung dulo ng Pilipinas, no? Ang probinsya ng Tawi-Tawi. Para siyempre lahat po ay mapakinggan natin. Makita natin yung konteksto ng issues na kinakaharap ng ating mga stakeholders. Ano ba yung mga emerging priorities nila? Ano yung pangangailangan nila? At ano ba yung dapat nating bigyan ng solusyon para matransform yung ating education? Although, magkakaiba yung konteksto ng kanilang mga issues pagdating sa edukasyon, na kinaharap, iisa lang po yung layunin ng mga bawat paaralan, bawat komunidad, ang mapataas po ang kalidad ng edukasyon sa ating bansa. Ako po, personally, yung tumatak sa akin during the consultation namin na ginawa, ayan, kasama po yung mga taga-DepEd natin, no, at ibang taga-UN, ay yung pangangailangan ng mga learners, no, yung access sa digital learning. Importante po, lalong-lalo na po sa situation na meron tayo ngayon.
At to them, yung digital learning, no, hindi lang ito natatapos sa pagkakaroon ng gadgets, pagkakaroon ng laptops, computers. Ito din yung access dun sa ating internet connectivity, sa mga signal, para mas ma-enable natin silang makapag-advance sa kanilang mga pag-aaral. Ayan. So speaking of BARM, and kanina na-mention na to ni Ms. Mariel, no, likewise, the Ministry of Basic, Higher and Technical Education, or the MBHT in BARM, also recently conducted their basic education reform and development consultation in Davao just last August 2 to 3. Yes, 2 to 3. To present naman the highlights that they gathered on their specific concerns and priorities in the area of the Bangsamoro Administrative Region of Muslim Mindanao, or BARM, may we call on the Chief of the Legal Division, Attorney Mojahid S. Guro.
Thank you very much. Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillahilladhi ja'alal ilma dhulman wa ja'alal ilma nuran wassalamu asrafil anbiya'i wal mursalin amma ba'd. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. First and foremost, I would like to pay respect to the Vice President and the Secretary of Education, Honorable Sara Duterte, and of course to the officials of the Department of Education who are joining us in this event. Our friends from UNICEF, other stakeholders, regional directors, to the youth and adolescents, representatives who are present and joining us right now. Other guests, of course, my colleagues from the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region. Again, magandang umaga po sa ating lahat. As I listened to the presentation earlier, I have concluded that the challenges that are faced by the different parts of the country are also the same challenges, most probably, are the challenges that are also being faced by the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao. But of course, there are key differences. I think I find it appropriate first to introduce the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao and the Ministry of Basic Higher and Technical Education and why we are participating this event and why we are treated differently with the other administrative regions in the country. The Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao is a product of the decade-long peace negotiation between the MILF, the Moro Islamic Liberation Front, and the government of the Republic of the Philippines, which culminated in the signing of the 2014 Comprehensive Agreement on the Bangsamoro. And the Bangsamoro Organic Law mandates the creation of the Ministry of Basic Higher and Technical Education as a subsystem of the national education system in order for the Bangsamoro people to achieve their full potential with respect to their right to self-determination. So that's why we are having a separate presentation. But this presentation, as I said earlier, is just, probably substantially the same with the presentation earlier. Ay, pababa. Sorry. Okay, there was this, this is the context of the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region, as I've said earlier. What might be true to the Bangsamoro, to the other region might not be, might be different in the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region. Other region don't have the what you call that, don't have to deal with the armed conflict, of course, the effects of the Marawi siege, and so on. So contextually, there are circumstances that are unique in the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region. So we have a different socio-political and cultural landscape. So this is the highlight of the consultations that was series of consultations conducted by the Ministry of Basic Higher and Technical Education, which also culminated in Davao City this August 2 and 3. Lack of access to quality education is still a prevalent problem in the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region. Of course, the region is new. The Ministry of Basic Higher and Technical Education is a new entity, and we are undergoing several phases of transition. Lack of access to equitable resources is one also of the problem that has been highlighted by our participants. This is understood because the way that the budget of the Ministry of Basic Higher and Technical Education operates is not the same with that of the Department of Education. Just an overview of the budget. The entire Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao has this black grant, and in the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region, there are about 15 or 17 line agencies and offices competing for this black grant. And although the highest priority for the budget is provided for the Ministry of Basic Higher and Technical Education, it is, it is still inadequate to fund all the programs, all the needs of the region. And this is also true in the Department of Education, as was presented. So I just want also to remind everyone that this is the perception of our stakeholders. I'm not presenting to you an official data. Lack of access to safe and healthy environment, of course, this has been highlighted because of the COVID-19 pandemic also. We become more mindful of our health and safety. I understand one of the, what you call that, one of the problems also that we face is, and the adolescents highlighted in their consultation, was the mental health issues, okay? As an effect of the pandemic, and of course, because we are living in a digital world where social media, the use of social media is increasing. It affects the mental health of our learners. And because we are in prone to more conflict, of course, um, there are still, threats of redo and other, what do you call that, a local conflict in our region. So there's also high prevalence of malnutrition. Of course, lack of livelihood for the parents, and this affects all the things that um, our learners are facing. There is this weak mechanism, although we know that we have the local school board. Of course, there is a weak implementation of the policy. That's why the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region also is developing its own Bangsamoro governance code in order to intensify the campaign for the local government units and the community to support different, different agencies such as the Ministry of Basic Higher and Technical Education. Because education is a collaborative effort of the between the community and the governments, so I think there is a need really to implement this. This is not unique to the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region. Of course, we have a vibrant legal frameworks when it comes to implementing education, but most of these are not fully implemented on the ground. Now, for the teachers and teaching profession, these are the main issues that were presented. They also proposed some solution. Of course, poor working conditions of teachers. I understand this also, concerns the benefits that our teachers are actually receiving. They want, of course, a higher pay for their effort. Lack of professional development is also one of the problems highlighted. They felt that there is already an irrelevant or outdated teaching strategy. Of course, it's understandable because we are transitioning from a full digital, full digital learning. This is also probably the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic, where we have seen that some of the teachers are not really adept in using the computer and the internet for distance learning. And low attraction of the most competent teachers. Our most competent teachers are not staying with us because of the insufficient benefits that they think that they are getting. Some of them go abroad and so on. And of course, the learning and skills for life, work, and sustainable the things are the quality and of learners that we are producing. It's not really matching the demand of the our business sectors probably, or our employment. Weak collaboration of institutions. Of course, it is also cited, as I've said earlier, poor institutional monitoring and support, limited skill teacher to empower, educate people with disability and learner. So this is one of the problems also that is being faced by the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region. Of course, we don't have specialized teachers that are trained for as children or meet the demands of the special children. For the digital learning and transformation, this is really a problem because first and foremost, there are a lot of municipalities and some of the provinces of the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region is not fully, they don't have still access to electricity, and it's really a problem for them to have their own internet connection. It's also the internet connection around the remote places of the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region is very poor, and it's really a problem. I mean, that's why they cited that, they cited it as one of the priority challenges, of course, and gadgets and facilities, of course. They also cited the poor data management, which affects the monitoring system. It's really hard to, get data from the ground. And of course, we have the financing of education. Okay, I have already discussed earlier how the budget of the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao operates. That's why we have requests for the national government to continue some of the nationally funded programs to be implemented in the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region, because we are really working on a very tight budget. Considering the competing interests also that we have with other line agencies of the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region for the Black Grant. And the Black Grant, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, is not forever. That would, the Black Grant is also is just intended for this transition. And unequal support to madrasa. We are glad to inform the body that the minister has just signed the implementing rules and regulations of the Bangsamoro Education Code, which institutionalized the public madrasa system in the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region. And I think this is being addressed now by the ministry for its part. No budget for digitalized learning, lack of support on technical education. So the last one is the thematic action track for governance. Okay, so we have a very vibrant legal framework, of course, but no matter how good the policy is, it will always be the implementation of that policy which will turn it into a reality for our people. And probably they've said that because they have not felt the policies on the ground. We have very promising policies. I'm not just talking about the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region, but also of the entire situation in the country. So it's not really, sometimes it's not really a question of policy perhaps, but it's about, it's the question of implementation, how the policy is being implemented on the ground. And we recognize this as a problem because as we reviewed different legislation of the previous autonomous region in Muslim Mindanao, there are very good policies, but they are not implemented. So, sorry. I think that ends my presentation for that. Thank you very much again, and Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Attorney Mujahid Guro, for that presentation on the highlights naman po from our Bangsamoro Administrative Region in Muslim Mindanao. Ayan. From the presentation of Attorney, we were able to capture really that as we've mentioned earlier and we've noticed that the context, it really just differs in the context, but our challenges are also interconnected, or they're quite similar actually. Pero yun, but at the end of the day, this is a joint coordination, joint cooperation of the different stakeholders to be able to address the different challenges that we experience. Ayan. Later, at this point, we've already heard the highlights from our Department of Education, from the MBHTE. Later on naman, we will hear the insights from the stakeholders themselves. We will just be having a quick break. So,
ayan, for our participants na nandito ngayon, we'll be having a 10-minute break. Ngayon po ay 10:45 on my clock. So, babalik po tayo ng 10:55 at magkaroon po muna tayo ng short break, CR break, water break. And for our live audience na nanonood sa ating Facebook, we will resume at our activity by 10:55. Maraming salamat po sa inyo.
Maraming salamat po. In the meantime, you can watch our videos. Maraming salamat.
And as the cliche goes, change starts within ourselves. So we need to commit ourselves to progress, to continuously learn and develop ourselves for us to be able to cater the needs of the students as well as to provide quality students and better citizens in the future.
Sisikapin ko na uunahin talaga yung estudyante at sisikapin ko din na kung ano man ang matutunan nila is dapat yun yung necessary na matutunan nila pagkatapos ng kanilang pag-aaral.
Good morning. May I request everyone to please all settle down. We will resume the activity in 2 minutes. Maraming salamat po. Again, to our participants, we will resume our activity in 1 minute na lang po. So, take your seats and please all settle down. Maraming salamat po.
Again, may we request everyone to please settle down as we will be proceeding with the rest of our program for this morning. Ayan. Okay. So before we proceed with the remaining of our program for this morning, we would like to invite everyone po, no? So if you would, for our participants here at Pasig City, at the side of our hall, you will see the artwork of Mr. Kiko Miranda. So he flew from Davao City to make an artwork for us for today, no, highlighting yung mga napag-usapan po natin sa ating convergence. And it's a very creative way of putting together what we have already discussed. So as you grab your coffee, get your snacks, no, sana po ay madaanan nyo ang ginawang artwork para sa atin ni Sir Kiko. Napakaganda po. He was able to highlight, I think ang nagawa na niya ay yung speech po ni VP and Secretary Sara, at yung talk ni Mr. Gustavo Gonzales. Ayan. So we invite everyone to view the artwork of Sir Kiko. Maraming salamat, Sir Kiko. He is at the side po of our hall. You will see it's flashed on our wall. Naka-projector po ang kanyang artwork. Ayan.
Again, maraming salamat po for settling down. Ngayong napakinggan na natin ang mga nakalap na challenges, ideas, and emerging priorities ng ating kagawaran at syempre kasama ng Ministeryo ng Edukasyon, maririnig naman natin mula sa ating mga mag-aaral, mga guro at komunidad o tinatawag nating grassroots stakeholders. Ano nga ba ang kanilang gustong iparating sa ating gobyerno para maitaguyod ang future ng ating edukasyon? Itoon po natin ang ating attention sa ating screen para sa call to action videos ng ating grassroots stakeholders.
Hingin sa gobyerno ay sana po mabigyan ng oportunidad ng kabataan, lalong-lalo na po ang mga mahihirap na makapag-aral ng libre at walang diskriminasyon.
Maliban sa buo, kailangan din po natin ng upuan at room at yung internet access.
Water supply po minsan po kasi namamatay po yung tubig dyan, kailangan pa po namin mag-iib sa malayo.
Magkaroon naman ng financial aid, uniform, or anything na kailangan para sa school.
Sana po magbigay po maraming funds for education na nawawala po yung equity for education. Sa basic education, marami nag-offer ng free from public schools. Hindi pa rin po accessible sa lahat ng tao, especially po depends po sa socio-economic status po ng family. Una po, kailangan
sa paaralan po, gaya ng books, upuan at iba pa.
Yung ibang gamit po na textbook is yung kalaunan pa. Gaya nga sabi nila, yung textbook na gamit niya nung elementary sila is yun din yung nagamit nila. So, ang gusto namin sana is mabigyan kami ng mga pang 21st century na textbooks po.
Yung teachers shortage po na sa dami po ng mga pupils natin ngayon, talagang kulang po ang ating guro.
Kailangan po itong ma-address yung paano ba natin minimeasure yung success ng mga bata for them to pass a certain grade level or a certain lesson or a certain subject. Yung no student left behind, siguro dapat mabago na yung connotation doon na kung sinabing no student left behind ay pwedeng ma-delay pero hindi dapat mag-stop yung learning. So hanggang hindi pa siguro na ma-master yung competencies na dapat na ma-achieve ay i-delay muna.
Yung mga pangangailangan sa school, as a science school, ay wala dito eh. At least mag-provide ng mga whiteboard, then another gadget for the student. Kasi nga, the student must learn how to use this digital technology. So how can they learn kung mismo sila ay wala?
Dagdagan pa yung MOA namin. Kung pwede lang sana, makapiling kami man lang.
Sana mabigyan pa ako ng mga buildings kasi wala pa akong library, wala pa akong science lab.
Ang area namin dito is malapit sa man-made calamity yung armed conflict. Nagkaroon po ng armed conflict, mahihirapan si teacher, mahihirapan po kami na ang mga bata is huwag muna maglabas sa classroom, huwag muna maglabas sa school campus kasi nga po lahat ng nakapaligid is exit. Palibutan na ng bakod, pag mayroong nangyari barilan, hindi makuha ang bata hanggat hindi si parents ang kumuha.
Bigyan ng pansin ang mga matatagal na sa servisyo ng mga teacher na nasa malayong lugar ay sana mabigyan din ng chance na mabalik sa kanilang lugar.
I'd like the government to address the challenges in teacher motivation to stay in the profession.
Ang challenges namin is yung parents mismo, yung kulang yung kalumayan nila. Tapos yung mga intruders dito.
Sana po mabigyan ng proteksyon at matutukan ang bawat kalusugan ng mga bata. Sana po ay magkaroon ng youth facilities at nurses ang bawat kaaralan.
Yung pag-improve po ng ating infrastructure, particularly yung ating internet connectivity. Nakakalimit din po kasi ang kakulangan o yung poor connectivity po.
Bigyan sapat na pangangailangan sa paaralan, kaya po ng gadget na gamit sa pag-aaral ng mga bata.
For me personally, having a deaf child, I want the government to please include in the curriculum a basic sign language. This is for the hearing students. Since we are targeting inclusive education.
I would like also to request the different officials that to look into the needs and the grievances of the teachers and the learning tools and materials needed by the students, the parents, and the faculty use their own money in providing that materials to the students.
Dapat may connectivity ang Department of Education from the starting from the city municipalities.
Hirapan kami magpaaral ng mga anak namin. Lalo-lalo na sa mga pandemya na wala kami ng trabaho. Gusto namin tutulungan kami ng ibang agency. Dito kami sa Tawi-Tawi para makatuloy-tuloy ang pag-aaral ng mga anak namin sa magandang kinabukasan kung sila ay mga campus.
At naway mga tinig po namin mga kabataan, yung pakinggan po ng gobyerno. Yun ang po at maraming salamat at mag-ingat po kayo palagi.
Nani Inusudan. I am 18 years old. I live in Bayang Lanao del Sur and I am grade 12 student. Ang pinaka-educational challenge para sa akin at sa mga kapwa ko mag-aaral ay yung transportasyon. Kasi karamihan sa kanila ay malalayong lugar mula sa paaralan namin at kami naglalakad patungo doon.
Ako po si Miss Ria K. Kamsali, 23 years old. I'm incoming first year college and I'm from Maguindanao Division. Ang educational challenge po ay ang financial problem. Kasi po ako mismo yung naka-experience po. Naka-stop po ako dahil sa financial. Para po tulungan yung aking mga magulang na ibang bansa po ako sa bansang Saudi Arabia para lang po makatulong sa aking pamilya.
Ako po si Sadria Amelia Abdul Nasser, 19 na taong gulang, nakatira sa lungsod ng Marawi. Ang Marawi ay hindi pa po lubusang nakakabangon sa Marawi Siege. At ito na naman po kami at nasalanta na naman po ng pandemya.
I think poverty talaga, lack of money. Kasi many students in our city, hindi nila napapursue nga yung pag-aaral nila. May mga project na hindi na nila kayang i-provide which affects their grade. Nagkakaroon sila ng mga failing grades and from that minsan nag-drop sila sa mga schools. And lack of supports talaga and scholarship. Konti lang yung nabibigyan ng mga opportunities na makakuha ng mga scholarship.
Ang pinaka-educational challenge po doon sa amin ay yung pagiging mahina ng network connection. Dahil nahihirapan po talaga kami kumuha ng sagot pag mayroong kailangan i-research sa module namin. Mahabang oras pa po yung aantay namin bago kami makakuha ng sagot.
Yung aming nakasanayan na lugar is naagaw po ng iba dahil sa mga illegal na mga land grabbing po. Pero saan kami pinapaalis sa aming lugar at ginagamitan kami ng armas upang makaalis po kami doon sa lugar nila.
Sa community namin, I think yung problem is yung financial nila. Kasi may ibang mga tao na hindi kaya may pag-aral yung kanilang mga anak.
Ako bilang parte ng BARM at ang aking naranasan ay lack of educational materials. Napakalayo po ng SGA sa makabagong panahon ngayon. Ang mga estudyante po doon ay hindi po marunong gumamit ng mga computer. Isa yun sa pinaka-lack sa amin. Kumbaga na pag-iiwanan na yung SGA, especially yung mga estudyante, dapat makapagsabay sila sa makabagong panahon ngayon.
I can put my words po sa mga students, mga youth and children na nasa community po namin na kung saan nasisilayan ko po na nahihirapan sila because some of them are in the form or in the stage na nasa child labor na po, lalong-lalo na po yung mga kabataan po sa lugar po namin. So karamihan po sa kanila ay nagtatrabaho, yung mga maliliit po na mga bata ay nagsisikad-sikad or nagpapadyak po ng bike in order for them to earn money po.
Bilang isang kabataan ng Basilan, marami po kami na-encuentro challenge sa edukasyon tulad ng financial. Lahat tayo naapektuhan sa income during the pandemic, kaya nahirapan po kami especially sa mga module ng mga kabataan.
One of the reason kung bakit bumaba yung trust ko sa sarili ko sa yung self-esteem is yung bullying.
Dahil po ang Tiyaga po ng Sur ay province, ang pinaka-challenge talaga doon po ay yung sasakyan papunta sa eskwelahan dahil po malayo ang mga bahay ng mga estudyante sa aming paaralan. Kaya po karamihan sa mga estudyante na walang mga sariling sasakyan ay nahihirapan pumunta sa school at kailangan pang maglakad. Mas maayos
akong makakapag-aral kung
may open po na scholarship po sa mga katulad namin.
yung mga pamilya ko po ay suportado.
May sapat, maayos, at maraming oportunidad na ibinibigay sa ating mga estudyante mula sa kinder hanggang kolehiyo.
Mayroon kaming sapat na kagamitan sa pag-aaral at mga
katutubong guro na mas nakakaalam ng aming mga pangangailangan alinsunod sa katutubong kasanayan sa aming eskwelahan.
Yung mga kagamitan sa school ay di kalidad at kompleto.
Kung makaka-provide ang bar ng transportasyon para sa aming mga estudyante at malakas na internet access.
Kung face-to-face classes na po.
Mabibigyan kami ng transportasyon para sa aking mga kamag-aral.
May mga magandang facilities sa paaralan namin.
Kung disiplinado po lahat ng mga estudyante sa paaralan, wherein mawawala po yung mga cases ng bullying.
Kung mabigyan po kami ng opportunity tulad ng mga scholarship,
Ligtas at maayos ang seguridad sa aming lugar.
Muli, palakpakan po natin yung ating mga grassroots stakeholders, no, na nakasama natin sa ating consultation noong mga nakaraang linggo.
Yes, to them. So we were able to see and watch yung mga insights, challenges, yung mga naisip na emerging priorities ng ating stakeholders. The videos that were presented are from the consultations we did in the different parts of Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao. So, ayan. At syempre, no, again, we are live on Facebook at sa ating mga kasama naman po sa Facebook, no, and even here sa ating hall today, if meron pa kayong experiences, insights na gustong i-share, no, on the challenges in education or how you can transform education, please feel free to share on your Twitter, sa inyong social media pages. Ayan, alam ko lahat tayo ay may social media pages na these days, no? And please use the hashtag Transforming Education and Transform PH Education. Ayan, salamat po.
Ang tanong po na sasagutin natin ay kung may mensahe ka sa gobyerno, ano ang iyong sasabihin para mapaunlad at mataguyod yung ating edukasyon sa bansa. Again, gamitin po natin ang ating hashtag na Transform PH Educ and Transforming Education.
That's right to them. At kanina din, no, kung mapapansin nyo po, actually, yung mga learners, the learners that you saw earlier, the school heads, the teachers, some of them are actually here with us today. So we highly encourage everyone, even our learners, to interact, engage, no? Especially later on, we will be having a breakout session. That's the perfect opportunity to hear from one another, and converse about what is really the status or how is our education system at the moment and what can we do, what is our role. Ayan.
Again, ayan, saan ulit yung ating mga learners? Taas ka ng kamay para ma-recognize tayo. Ayan, makakasama po natin sila sa ating breakout. May pagkakataon pong kausapin tayo sila mamaya. Ang ating mga guro po.
Taas kamay ang ating mga guro at school heads. Sige, taas
And
niya yung
school heads, of course.
Ayan.
Community members.
Community members, if any, or parents and
Parents.
guardians. Yan, okay. And, yan.
Ayan, we encourage everyone no, na kausapin yung ating mga grassroots stakeholders sa mangyaring breakout session natin. Ngayon naman, para ipaliwanag yung mechanics na magiging usapan natin, ano ba yung magiging talakayan natin sa breakout session, tinatawagan po natin ang representative mula sa UNICEF.
Thank you, Sir Nicky.
Good morning. I have the unenviable task of organizing all of our officials and experts into a coherent workshop for 1 hour or so. So hopefully we are requesting for your participation and collaboration with your fellow officials. So let's see some of the details. The main objective is to move the content forward. So we've already known the clamor from the field, the requests from our community members and things like that. So we want to move forward and start thinking about what the country can really commit to the United Nations and to itself, not just during the summit, but even after. So there are various stakeholders now present with us. We are at least 160. So we have a very good turnout. Mechanics. So we shall be dividing you into the thematic action tracks. There are 6 of them, and we've actually posted the groupings only for the external partners. For our DepEd participants, we give you the flexibility to choose, but we also retain the right to relocate you if there are some groups that are more populous than others. Okay. And then the learners, parents, and school heads, they have their side event. They have their a different group in a different location, and we will see them again later in the afternoon. Okay, so we have a documenter from DepEd, and then I already discussed the groupings. Okay, so as you noticed, we already have a ton of priorities coming from the stakeholders. So we will be processing all of these ideas into a coherent storyline. The first request that we have for the workshop is that we should extend the analysis not just for basic education, but also to the entire education sector, starting from early childhood up to TVET and higher education. So if our experts here have some insight regarding the other subsectors, let us gladly extend our discussion to that level. Next, we all know as policymakers that everything is urgent, but we need to have some semblance of prioritization as well. So it's very difficult to implement all of them simultaneously, and in the template we will identify which ones are more urgent than others, which ones are prerequisites of the other suggestions, and which of them can actually wait for a later time when things have settled down. So we ask you to put your thinking hats on to help us make sense of the various priorities that we gathered. So key questions. First, using the lens of transforming education systems, are there any other priorities that we need to add? That's one major decision that we need to do during the workshop. Next, do the priorities transcend the education subsectors? So the example later, for example, teachers, we found that teachers, regardless of whether you're in the ECCD subsector or you're in the higher education subsector, there are common challenges for teachers and professors alike. And then which of the priorities can be considered as short-term priorities and which ones can be medium-term in the sense. Okay. So this is the first part of our workshop. The second part is actually to define the interrelationships. So if you've noticed, so far we're talking about different priorities in a vacuum. So what we want to do now is relate them to the different thematic tracks so that there's a coherent plot or statement, storyline to the different thematic tracks. We're not talking about different areas, different silos of discussion, but they need to be a coherent action, a coherent commitment moving forward. Okay. Oops. Okay. And then if there are indeed implications to the different action tracks, some of these are actually not straightforward in the sense that some might be contradicting to the priorities of the different action tracks, or some of them might create unintended consequences for a different action track. I think now is the time, with all our brain power in this room, now is the time to actually sort this out, so that when we develop the country statement, it will be a bit easier, and there's some coherence to our output. And then lastly, I keep talking about the storyline. So if you can see like a coherent storyline, a coherent journey for our thematic action tracks, then we would gladly take those inputs and bring them to the actual technical writing of the statement. Okay, so key questions, implications for other priority tracks, and then the plot. all your facilitators, they have the same guidance. They have the materials with them, and you will also have a copy of the presentation earlier listing down all the priority actions. So we will start from that. Okay, so posted around the room is where you will be sitting, and we took the liberty, hopefully it's okay with you, that we grouped you already into different action tracks. If there are some requests, so you can easily just come to the secretariat. So I won't flash everything for very long, but for track 1, these are the groups. For track 2, these are the groups. You can see that also posted in the location for the breakout groups. Track 3, here are the groups. Track 4, as much as possible, we tried to have an even representation of external partners. Track 5, we've gotten the information from the registration, so if you haven't registered, please also do so. And then lastly, for education governance, so we have a list. Okay, so that's it. We will start immediately after this, and then we will have a process check by 12 before lunchtime. If we need more time by the afternoon, we will provide maybe around 30 minutes if possible. So I would like to call on in front all the facilitators from the United Nations. Please could you come in front, our facilitators. The reason why the facilitators are from the United Nations is because the DepEd people wanted to really participate, and they don't want to be encumbered in the note-taking and the facilitation of the activity. But we have our facilitators from the UN to support, and then we have documenters from DepEd to harap kayo sa kanila, ma'am, to support everybody. So if you saw your name for track 1, it will be facilitated by Ma'am Neth and Lavinia. Please raise your hand. Track 1, sila po yung kasama nyo. For track 2, for skills and learning would be Ma'am Kokoy and Ma'am Kathy from ILO. Taas pang kamay. For track 3, for teachers, it will be facilitated by Sir Reg Alquitran from UNESCO. For track 4, it will be facilitated by Sir Ave Mejia from UNICEF. And then track 5, it will be Ma'am Georgina Belardo from UNICEF also. For track 6, it will be facilitated by Sir John Alikpala from the UNRC office. So they will be your group members, they will be your facilitators, and please just locate them when we start going to the groups. The other two lovely ladies here to my right, they will be taking care of our parents, guardians, and our children. So children is with Jamie, and Ma'am Cheche will be with the guardians and the parents. So thank you so much. Hopefully it's quite clear. We enjoin you to trust the process, and please help us develop the best output possible in this very challenging task. So thank you so much. We'll see you again after lunch. Thank you.
Thank you, Sir Nicky. So before we proceed with our breakout sessions, we would just like to inform our live audience joining us via Facebook Live, YouTube, and our official DepEd page that we will be ending this live stream for a moment. But we will be back po by 1:30 for the continuation of our activity. And kahit tayo po ay magkakaroon ng panandaliang break, no, patuloy po kayong sumali sa ating convergence. You may also share, pakinggan nyo po yung mechanics ng ating breakout sessions. Kung meron din po kayong inputs, insights, you may definitely share that with us and use the hashtag Transforming Education and transform PH Educ para po mabasa namin ang inyong messages. Ayan.
Okay, if you have missed the workshop mechanics, naka-flash po sa ating screen yung QR code. Uploaded po dyan yung mechanics na binanggit ni Sir Nicky from UNICEF. And of course, the presentation materials na mga ginamit ng ating mga presenter.
That's right. This is also flashed on the TVs dito po sa ating room. So ma-access nyo po yan. If hindi nyo po nakita what groups you belong into, nandyan din po yan sa ating TV screens. And again, you may approach our secretariat from UNICEF, United Nations. Ayan.
Okay. You may now go to your respective breakout groups. Nakita po natin yung mga faces natin kanina. Puntahan po natin at nakadikit din po sa ating mga wall kung saan tayo pupunta na breakout.
Yes. So we will be ending at, as mentioned by Sir Nicky, we will be ending by 12 o'clock. Lunch will be served from 12 noon to 1:30. And if you have any questions, you may ask our secretariat. Balik na lang po tayo dito by 1:30. Ayan. Good luck po sa inyong mga breakout sessions. Enjoy and trust the process. Maraming salamat po.
Para po sa mga organizations na nandito po, na wala sa ating listahan, maaari po kayong pumili ng breakout session na pupuntahan po natin. So, it's our choice na lang po kung saan po tingin natin makakapag-input po tayo ng ating mga insights. Pipili na lang po tayo at sasama po sa kanila. Inform lang po natin yung ating secretariat and moderators. Maraming salamat po.
For our school heads, parents, teachers, and learners, yan, again, for our school heads, teachers, parents, and learners, yung inyo pong magiging breakout session ay dun sa katapat nating hall, just across po nitong hall natin na ito. Ayan, so meron po kayong separate room. Again, for our school heads, teachers, learners, at parents, your breakout sessions will be located at a separate hall just across the hall that we are in now po. Ayan. Maraming salamat.